number 5 of these little videos where I talk about music that has some significance to me and my life. In the last one, I was talking about wandering down the deep and dark path that leads into prog rock. This time I'm going entirely the opposite direction. I've already mentioned being taken to concerts by the Spinners and Jackie and Bridie and being led from there into the world of the singer-songwriter. However, the other side of folk music is probably just known as traditional folk to most people. And when I first went to university, I was taken on a Tuesday night to a room in a pub in Rusholme in Manchester, a pub called the Welcome Inn. And in this room there were 30 to 40 singers and musicians gathered every Tuesday night to just celebrate folk music. There were fiddlers, banjo players, guitarists, and a lot of singers. And that's where I first developed a love of English traditional folk music. I say English deliberately because the Scots and the Welsh and the Irish, they all seem to be quite proud of their tradition. The English seem to be a little embarrassed by it, which I think is a shame. I mean, even the dance tradition of Morris dancing is generally ridiculed by more people than it is celebrated. I love a bit of Morris dancing myself. There you go. So, I learnt songs with choruses. I learnt tunes that I eventually tried to play along with. But it's the chorus songs in particular that dragged me into a love of real folk music, I suppose. These are traditional songs. These are working people's songs. These are songs where nobody can remember who wrote them. A lot of them have a relevance to something or other that was practical. You know, sea shanties were often devised to help the men keep a rhythm about their daily tasks. Because when you're working in a team of 4 or 6 or a dozen, it helps if you're all working at the same pace. The same would go for, farm workers when they're scything a field. It helps if you can stay in the same rhythm as everybody else, so you don't get your ankles scythed off. And then you'll find things that celebrate different working traditions, different trades, and that. I'm going to play you a song that celebrates one of these trades, and a lot of us will have ancestors who worked in this trade or one of the others that are celebrated in folk song. The trades where if you got to the end of the year and you were still all alive and you'd still been reasonably well fed and you still had a roof over your heads, you were doing okay. None of this middle class materialistic comforts that we have these days. You know, end of the week, half a pint of beer, that's all right. You know. Anyway, I'm going to play you this track by a family from Hull who toured the country, showing their love of this English tradition. Here's an example of it. This is from the northeast, and there are words in here which are definitely northeastern. This is generally about the end of the shift when you've been working underground in the coal mines, and this is talking about pulling the cage of miners up to the top so they can go home at the end of the day, probably in need of a good bath. Dangerous job, Dangerous work. But these were proud people. No instrumentation, just strong voices. Harmonies where they seem to fit. The strength of those voices, yeah? Now, I don't know how many people still sing this sort of stuff. There are some of us about. I seriously hope that some of the young people come along and pick up on these songs and don't mess with them too much. I don't mind. I'm not precious about these things. If people want to do rock versions of old traditional stuff, that's fine. As long as somebody remembers the way that they were originally sung. There's history in these. But quite often there's messages that are relevant today. The pride that people have in the trade that they do. Be nice. Be nice if people would write about some of the current trades and the pride that people have. Maybe I'll have to do it if nobody else will. Come on, let's support all these nurses, these teachers, these farm workers, these policemen, these firemen, all these people that do what we probably used to call a proper job. See you next time.